Good morning, everyone. Hope you're all off to a great day. Welcome to another video of the React documentation. Today, we're going to be going over the section 6 of the main concepts part of the documentation, which is how to handle events in React. It's pretty simple. It's similar to just HTML, like normal HTML, with some subtle differences. If you're like me and you're coming from, let's say, something like Angular, this is going to look completely different because Angular handles things in its own way that nothing else really handles things in that same way. But either way, it's pretty simple. And yeah, let's get started. So what we'll do is I have a new project here. It's blank. I deleted everything that was in, that comes standard with a new React project. And so what we're going to do is we're going to create two things. Number one, we're going to create actually three things. We're going to create a form, we're going to create a paragraph tag, and we're going to create a button. And I'm going to show you guys how to do two separate types of events, and then we'll display what's going on inside of the paragraph tag. So you might be familiar with, obviously you're familiar with a standard button, but you might be familiar with something like this in HTML, and then you would have like handle click, for example, here. So you might be familiar with something like that in HTML, right? Now in React, it's a little bit different, okay? We have our button right here, but of course nothing happens. And also you'll see we get this warning in the console that says invalid event handler property on click. Did you mean on click? And at first you might look at it and say, oh, well, it's kind of the same thing, isn't it? And that's where the similarities end. So although we do use the same naming of things in the same words, we kind of address them a little bit differently. So in React, we're going to be using camel case, which means that this here should actually be that, just with a capital C. You'll also see that we still have a warning, although it's a different warning, because now we have expected onClick listener to be a function. Instead, we got a value of a string. And obviously, as you know, everything inside of the quotes like that, right? It's a string. So instead, what we have to do is use the curly braces like we've been doing everywhere else in React when wanting to put JavaScript code inside of what is HTML, to us at least, right? Hence the JSX bit. So what we're going to do is we will put handle click here. Actually, no, we don't do that. We just do it like this should be. And this should give us an error that it's not defined. That's okay because we haven't made it yet. So if we come here and say on click, this error now goes away. We can take in the event and we should be able to console log the event. Oh. Forgot the word function. That's my fault. In Angular, well, first off, that's an ES5 function, so you could do it as an ES6 function, sorry, but in Angular, this is how you write your functions. So coming over from Angular, used to doing things that way. But either way, that now works. And if we click this, we get the event, and this is everything that the browser is giving us, all the data that we can work with regarding what we just did, the click event, right? Something else to recognize, and I know I said we're going to be doing three things. We'll just add this as a fourth, perhaps. So we have that button. Let's say that we have an A tag, right? And the reason I'm going to show you this is very specific because we are going to have a button that we don't want to go anywhere, okay? And you'll see that it will go somewhere because that's just how it works. So we'll say YouTube, right? And I want to show you that if we have this here, if this was like a standard, well, you know what? I guess I can't really do standard. I'll just write it out. If this was a standard HTML thing, what we could do is we could say console, but we would have to spell it right, obviously, console log, and then we could say button was clicked, and then what we could do is we could have return false. And return false basically makes it so that we prevent the default behavior, which would be to go to the link. So if we had this here, which we do, right, this goes there. But let's say this was http://youtube.com, right? If we now click on this, it's going to go to youtube.com. So what's going on? We might not want that, but that's how you would do this in the standard HTML way. So the way that we do this in React, which is what I'm getting at, is preventing, especially for on-click events, which is preventing the browser's default behavior. The way that we do that in React is instead, okay, when we have our function here and we say stop default, okay, we'll come up here, we'll create this function stop default. And then inside here, what we can do is the same console log that we had before. I don't remember exactly what it says, but clicked and trying to reach YouTube. But what we can do, if we want to stop this behavior, right? This default behavior of going to the page that we clicked on, we can say event prevent default. Nope. Yep. Like that. And so now when we do this, it shouldn't go to YouTube. It should just console log what we did instead of going to YouTube. And so now you can kind of have things work yourself. So if you want to be able to take that click event and go and do your own thing with it and determine what your application does totally internally, you can now do that. You don't have to worry about it going to another page, right? So you can kind of take that event, manipulate it, and then move on. It's important to note that React defines these events in accordance with the W3C spec. So there's no need to worry about, will this work, for other browsers, or do I need the most recent this or the most recent that? It should just work. There shouldn't really be an issue in that regard. Also important to note is that in your JavaScript, you do not need to add an event listener because this is being taken care of. It's part of React as I understand it. Okay, so let's switch gears a little bit, and we're now going to talk about the same thing, handling events, but inside of class-based components. And what I want to show you, what I want to show you is we should call it form, the form component, because there will be a form on there. And then here, what I want to show you is that the way that we're going to do these event handlers is a little bit different, and we're also going to be able to integrate state into what we're doing, and we'll also be able to get two-way data binding, which is something that is huge in Angular that React doesn't really come with, but to actually get it is pretty simple. So we will import, we'll do our standard. I should make this like a snippet in VS Code, honestly. From React, and then we'll have class form. It shouldn't be that. It should be class. We'll just call it class video for now because I can't really think of a better name. So we'll say class video, and then we'll say extends React.component, and then we will just make that the default. It's not right. Export default video, and then here we'll have our constructor, which will have some props, and we'll have super in here, Then we'll have some state. And for the state, this is going to be important. So for the state, we'll just make this, we'll call this the name. And it'll be empty. And then down here in our render, we will have, actually that doesn't do like that. This is return. So here we're going to have, we have a button over there, we have that all working, but here what we're going to do is we're going to have a form. Actually, we can just have an input, we don't really need a form. And this form will have a name. Actually, no, it doesn't actually need a name, it just needs a value. And the value will be this dot state dot name. I think that should be it for now. This dot state dot name. I forgot the equal sign. Let's take, oh, we didn't actually put it there, so let's take a look. We can now add it here. So now we have this right here. Let's also get rid of all this. That did not do anything. We can, yeah, whatever. We can just add that back, that's fine. So we have all this here. Next, what we can do is to show you, actually, I'll just delete these things. Just comment them out just so that we can see some more of what's going on right here. We notice that there's nothing going on. I'm typing right now. Okay, I have two different keyboards, a Bluetooth one and my laptop one. Neither of them are doing anything, but we do have this warning right here. So what's going on here? We do have failed prop type. You provided a value prop to a form field without an on-change listener. This will render a read-only field. It should, or if the field should be mutable use, meaning that you can change it. Default value, otherwise set either on change or read only. Interesting. Okay, so what do we do about that? Let's go have a look. So what we're going to do is, the first thing, we're going to add a handle, or we're going to add, no, not that. We're going to do on change. And then we will have, I'm going to put in this. But actually, yes, to start with, I'm going to put in this. I'm going to say this dot handle change, and that does not receive anything else, I don't believe. And so here what we're going to do is we will have handle change, and in here we will just say something happened. Next thing we have to do is we have to bind to that. So basically we have to tell it that whenever you do this dot on change, we want you to do this on change function here, or method. So we will do this dot handle change equals this dot handle change dot bind to this. And now we still have an issue here. Nothing works, but you'll notice in the console when we type something, we get that console. So it did work. What we wanted to happen did in fact work. What we have to do next though is we need to get this event here. So how can we do that? So one way that we can do this is by commenting that out, coming down here and saying bind down there, and then saying this as well as the actual event. E is not defined. We'll take in E. Oh, actually, wait, I don't think I need it. Actually, scratch that. That was if you want to pass arguments, and that's something that we're going to get to in a little bit. Let's say that we want to be able to see what we actually got in the browser, right? So what we can do now is we can have the event, which isn't there. And how did I get this to work here, though? Oh, because it takes in an event. So we have this event here. That makes perfect sense. And now, if we do this, we can see that we have the event here. One of those things that we have inside of the event is the target. So if we say event.target and then let's say .value, for example, we actually get every letter that we typed in right here. You can see that. So now what we can do is we can say inside of this event thing, we can say this.setState inside of here. And then what we can do is actually say name is going to be equal to event.target.value. And that didn't work. Let's have a look. Set state of undefined. This dot set state. Did I do that wrong? Obviously. So this. Okay, cool. All right, so what did I just do? So first things first, because we had changed this function here and then decided not to use it that way, we have to go back and uncomment this out like so. The next thing we have to do in order to get the form to basically have two-way data binding where you can kind of type and it automatically shows up, and you can also see that here everything gets updated inside of the console. We need to basically have this, of course, be bound to that, but what we need to do is set state. What we need to do is use this.setState and then set the name equal to the event, target, and then the value of that target. And this will basically make it so that every time a new event is run, we're just setting the state of the name to whatever the now new value is of which was typed in by the event target or by the event, right? And then what we're doing is setting the state to equal that, and the state, of course, here is what this input is holding as a value. So I know that might sound a little convoluted. I'm not sure that I explained it in the best way because I kind of got confused in trying to do that, but that's how you do it, and it does obviously work. And so that's kind of how we can do some event handling on a form, for example. Something else that I want to show you guys are these different ways of doing this, of actually having this thing here, this right here, as well as this function down here. So there's three ways to do it. The first is the way that we see right here. Nothing wrong with that, right? That's, I think, the normal way historically for React to do this. The second way is to actually have this be as like a callback function where you have you have the event, and then after that you take in the event, except it's not ID, it's event. And that's fine. That will, I'm not sure if that'll still work, right? It still goes for every time that this gets fired, it basically goes to this event and passes in E, so it still works, right? The problem with this is that if you, let's say, have a child component that you're going to pass this event handler down to as a prop, what happens is that child component, every time that child component renders, this callback function is created again and again and again, and it could lead to performance issues and whatnot, and also cause unnecessary re-renders of the component. Okay, so there's one other way that the documentation says that we can go about doing this, and actually both of these ways are kind of in regards to being able to pass arguments to these things instead of just having, just this like this here. If you need to pass an argument, you could do that, and that's what both of these kind of methods are there to do. So the other thing that we can do is we can actually put the bind down here and then say this, which would be whatever thing you're passing to this. And then you could also have additional arguments after, and everything after that, those are all of your additional arguments. Okay, so that's the other option there. And there's nothing wrong with that. That'll work just fine. It's kind of up to you and how you want to do it. The last thing that I do want to mention is that if you guys have noticed, I have been, where is it? Here. I have been calling this with this .bind thing up here in the constructor. And you actually don't have to do this if it really bothers you. Now, me personally, I don't really mind. And at least right now, I don't mind. Maybe if I have a bigger application or different use cases later down the road, I might mind and I might not want to do it that way. But for right now, it doesn't really bother me personally. However, if it bothers you, one thing you can do is you can use what is called the public class field syntax, which I believe is experimental right now, but you can use it. It also is enabled by default with Create React App, so there's no need to worry about that there. However, what we could do then is we would essentially have an equal sign here and this there, and now we don't have to bind to it. So this should still work. It does. And we don't have to have this line right here. So we could, in theory, delete that. And we can also the console log. But we could delete that. And now all of a sudden, it's one less line of code that you have to write. It's one less thing that you have to look at. Now that I'm kind of looking at it, maybe I do like it a little bit better. I don't know. But either way, that works. And you don't have to do the bind thing. So that's it for this video. If you guys enjoyed, thank you so much for watching. Give me a thumbs up. Comment down below if you think I missed anything or if you think there's a way that I can improve these videos. I would love to hear your feedback. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.